the widow of Willow Grange. The first frost came the morning they buried Thomas. I remember how it silvered the hedges, how it caught in the lace of my gloves and turned my breath to ghosts in the air. The undertaker had warned me not to attend. "Not fitting, madam," he'd murmured, as though grief were a performance with seating charts. But I went anyway. I stood behind the yew hedge, hidden by the skeletal branches, and watched them lower my husband into the earth. No veil obscured my view. No one saw me weep. But by the time I returned to Willow Grange, the modest estate Thomas had inherited from his uncle, not grand enough for London society, but ours all the same, the rules had already begun to close in. My sister-in-law arrived before dusk, her mourning bonnet tied with such precision it looked stitched by duty itself. "You must not have gone," she said, not unkindly, but with the quiet horror one reserves for social missteps. "The neighbors will talk." "Let them," I replied, my voice raw. "Thomas is dead. What do I care for their whispers?" She only sighed and laid out the black dress she'd brought from town bombazine, high-collared, no trim. "Deep mourning begins now," she said. "For 2 years at least, you'll wear this. You'll receive no callers. You'll not attend balls, nor theater, nor even your own garden party if you'd planned one, which, thank heavens, you hadn't." I hadn't planned anything. Thomas was only 40. We'd spoken of expanding the orchard in spring, of sending our daughter, Clara, to finishing school in Bath, of adopting a second greyhound to keep Bess company. None of that mattered now. The first month was a blur of black wool and silence. Mirrors stayed shrouded. Clocks remained stopped. Even the servants moved like shadows, their voices hushed, their aprons trimmed with black ribbon. Clara, just 12, wore a white dress with a black sash and asked every night if Papa was cold in the ground. I had no answer that wouldn't break her heart further. Worse than grief was the quiet unraveling of our finances. Thomas, ever the optimist, had invested heavily in a railway venture that collapsed weeks before his fever took him. The solicitor's letter arrived on the 4th Sunday of mourning. Assets insufficient to cover outstanding obligations. We would keep the house for now, but the stables would be sold, the carriage, the pianoforte Clara adored. I sold my pearl necklace the next day. Not for mourning brooches, though I bought a modest jet pin, but for flour, coal, and a tin of cod liver oil for Clara's cough. By the second month, necessity outweighed propriety. I began mending for the vicar's wife first as a favor, then for coin. My stitches had always been neat. Thomas used to tease that I could darn a sock, so well it gained character. Soon other ladies came, the doctor's wife needing christening gowns, the miller's daughter wanting lace for her wedding shift. I worked after Clara slept, my fingers numb from cold and needle pricks, the fire banked low to save coal. No one in London would believe it. Eleanor Winthrop, daughter of a baronet, reduced to needlework like a seamstress. But here in the countryside, practicality outranked pedigree, and I found, to my surprise, that I didn't mind. There was dignity in useful hands. The turning point came in early spring. Mrs. Thorne, the widow of the local wool merchant, called unannounced. She'd heard of my embroidery. Would I consider designing patterns for her new line of shawls? "Not just any shawls," she said, eyes bright. "Fine wool, hand-dyed with motifs inspired by our valley hawthorn blossoms, river reeds, the Huron at dawn." I hesitated. To enter trade? To put my name, however discreetly, on goods sold in shops? But then I looked at Clara practicing her letters by the window in a dress 2 inches too short, and I said yes, the work changed everything, not overnight, not with fanfare, but slowly like ivy climbing a stone wall. I taught Clara to stitch as well. A lady should know how to earn her bread if need be. I told her, and she proved gifted, her hands quick, her eye for color uncanny. We turned the morning room into a studio. Bess the greyhound slept beneath the table, curled among spools of silk. By the time I entered half-mourning lavender-gray skirts, a bonnet with dove-colored ribbon, I was no longer just Thomas's widow. I was Mrs. Winthrop of Willow Grange, designer of the Willow Collection, mentioned in a provincial journal as a tasteful revival of rural elegance. 2 years to the day after Thomas's burial, I wore mauve. Not black, not gray. Mauve, the color of twilight, of memories softened by time. Clara stood beside me in the churchyard, now 16, her hair pinned up like a woman's, her sketchbook tucked under her arm. She'd been accepted to the new art school in Bristol. "You'll visit often?" I asked. "Every holiday," she promised. "And you'll keep designing, won't you? Even when I'm gone?" I touched the headstone, Thomas Winthrop, beloved husband and filed, and smiled. I think he'd want me to. That evening I hosted a small supper. Just Clara, Mrs. Thorne, the vicar, and his wife. No grand speeches, no morning cards, just good soup, fresh bread, and laughter that didn't feel like betrayal. Later, as I walked back through the orchard, now heavy with green apples, I realized something. I was no longer waiting for grief to end. I had learned to carry it like a locket close to the heart present, but no longer crushing. Victorian society may have dictated my dress, my seclusion, my silence, but it could not dictate my spirit. And in the quiet resilience of a widow's hands, stitching, teaching, building, I had found not just survival, but a life remade, not in spite of loss, because of it.